It's Thursday, the 8th of July, 2021. Welcome to Fear and Greed, the business podcast that sets you up for a successful day. I'm Sean Aylmer. Sydney's lockdown is extended by a week as big business mobilises to speed up the rollout of vaccines. That's our main story. Also coming up in today's podcast, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg says national interest ahead of commerce when it comes to China. Annuity Group challenger under takeover speculation after private equity takes a stake, and Seven Group takes effective control of Boral. Then stay listening for my chat to Rita De Silva from EY about finding a good fund manager, something we all need. But first, here's a brief look at markets. Wall Street was higher overnight following the release of minutes of the latest Federal Reserve meeting, which showed that the central bank expected elevated uncertainty and there was disagreement over when to reduce bond purchases. In afternoon trading, the S&P 500 was 0.3% higher, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 0.2% and the Nasdaq was 0.1% higher. European markets were stronger, with many bourses near record highs. Frankfurt's DAX jumped more than 1%, enjoying its best session in 7 weeks, after the European Commission upgraded growth forecasts for the region. London's FTSE and the Stoxx Europe 600 were both 0.7% higher. It was a strong day on the local share market, with the S&P ASX 200 ending up almost 1% to 7,327 points. Technology stocks did best, followed by consumer staples and healthcare companies. Energy companies were among the worst performers again. Oil prices fell again overnight, and Brent crude is worth just over $73 a barrel. Gold prices pushed back above $1,800 an ounce and are at 3-week highs, and the Aussie dollar continues to trade at just under 75 US cents. Sydney's lockdown has been extended for a week after another 27 new community cases of COVID-19 were reported yesterday. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian warned that even tougher lockdowns may be needed in local areas where cases have risen. The decision was taken in an emergency cabinet meeting, with the reports that Treasurer Dominic Perrottet was the only MP against the lockdown extension due to the damage it would cause the economy. 3 local government areas in the southwest of the city have emerged as hotspots, with case numbers being closely watched. The most recent wave is hitting younger people harder. 1 person in their 30s with the virus was in intensive care, while 14 of the 37 people now in hospital were under the age of 55. The lockdown is estimated to wipe about $1 billion from Australia's gross domestic product each week. Calls by Mr Perrottet for extra help from Canberra fell on deaf ears yesterday, though the Federal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg highlighted there were $500 payments available for some workers with reduced hours. In contrast, most of Victoria's restrictions will be lifted tonight, allowing that state to return to normal, or something like normal. The bad news out of Sydney came as the CEO community came out in force yesterday, encouraging people to get vaccinated. Wesfarmers offered local Bunnings and Officeworks sites to boost community vaccination. Woolworths offered its national footprint, while Telstra boss Andy Penn said the rollout needed to be ramped up. Virgin Australia Chief Jane Herdlicker said a much better public education campaign was needed. More than 165,000 vaccine doses were administered on Tuesday, the largest number in a 24-hour period yet, taking the total number to 8.5 million. Notwithstanding the increase in number of jabs, only 7% of the population has been fully vaccinated, and around 1/4 of all Australians have had at least 1 dose. In a moment, the rest of the news you need to know this morning. In overseas news, the OECD has estimated that about 22 million fewer people are in the workforce in advanced economies as a result of COVID-19. While Australia has recovered many of the job losses, other countries, led by the US, have not. The report said some economies could have a jump in long-term unemployment. That's because low-skilled workers who lost their jobs at the start of the pandemic are least able to shift into sectors where hiring is strongest. Spain is the latest hotspot in Europe, with a surge in infections among younger, unvaccinated people. The infection rate in the country has tripled in the past week, according to the Financial Times. Spain scrapped most of its COVID restrictions back in May. Regulators in Beijing are planning to change rules that would allow them to block a Chinese company from listing overseas, even if that company earns revenue offshore, according to a report from Bloomberg. Ride-sharing group Didi listed a week ago on Wall Street, but lost $14 billion in value on Tuesday after Beijing's decision to not allow new users of the app. Chinese stocks on Wall Street have fallen ever since, and overnight, Didi and its directors and underwriters were sued for allegedly not disclosing the ongoing talks it was having with Beijing when it listed. The president of Haiti was assassinated in his home overnight. It follows unrest in the impoverished Caribbean nation in recent months, with the country facing a humanitarian crisis and a widespread shortage of food. And former US President Donald Trump has filed a lawsuit against Facebook, Twitter and Google and their CEOs, claiming he and other conservatives have been wrongly censored. Locally, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg said the Morrison government was putting the national interest ahead of business in its relationship with China. It followed comments from the Biden administration that China was campaigning against Australia and becoming increasingly aggressive in the region. The White House coordinator for the Indo-Pacific, Kurt Campbell, expects Beijing to try and further isolate Australia, and while Canberra had tried to mend fences, it had come to naught. Mr. Frydenberg said the government would always put the national interest first. US-based private equity group Apollo Global and Bermuda-based life assurance group Athene have joined together to take an 18% stake in annuity provider and fund manager Challenger Limited. It sent shares in the group up more than 10% yesterday before they closed 9% higher. Athene is seeking regulatory approval to lift its stake above 20%, media outlets reported yesterday. Challenger has been the subject of unsubstantiated rumours for months, but it now looks like the business is in play. One of the investment banks involved in the sale, Barrenjoey Capital Partners, is run by Brian Benari, the former CEO of Challenger. A consortium led by Macquarie Group is considering a rival offer for Sydney Airport, following the $22 billion bid for the company by an IFM-led consortium of infrastructure investors earlier in the week. According to Bloomberg, Macquarie has been talking to potential partners, including superannuation funds. Another option was for Macquarie to ask to be part of the IFM bid. It's not clear how likely an alternative bid is. Seven Group has passed the 34.5% hurdle it set for its stake in Boral. As a result, shareholders in the building materials group that have taken up Seven's takeover offer, despite the board of Boral rejecting it, will receive $7.40 a share. Seven now has 35% of Boral. It shows the benefit of being patient when stalking a company. Seven Group has effectively gained control of Boral without paying a takeover premium. Having said that, Boral's share price of $7.41 is almost exactly double the level of 12 months ago. Seven is expected to ask for a second seat on the board. Under siege retailer Myer has offered a board seat to Solomon Lew's Premier Investments after the latter lifted its stake in the department store to more than 15%. Mr. Lew has plenty of history with Myer. As a teenager, he supplied dresses to the department store and went on to become chairman of Coles Myer, but was eventually turfed out. He has since built Premier Investments into one of the best retailers in the country and, personally, is worth more than $4 billion, according to the Financial Review Rich List. But since leaving Myer, he's always been a very harsh critic of the department store. Myer's capitalisation is now under $360 million, whereas Premier's is $4.4 billion. AGL Energy will close one of its 4 units at its Torrens B gas power generator in South Australia, more than 10 years earlier than forecast due to lower energy prices. Shutting the 200 megawatt unit will have an impact on national energy supply and system security. AGL blamed challenging market conditions, but said there wouldn't be an impact on the 400 jobs at the plant. National Australia Bank yesterday forecast that the Reserve Bank wouldn't lift interest rates until 2024, in contrast to most other market economists. The central bank on Tuesday said its central scenario was for a rate rise in 2024, but a slight softening in language convinced some RBA watchers that rates would rise sooner. The guessing game continues. Growth in monthly spending during June was below previous years as lockdowns kicked in, according to ANZ card data. There was a 9% fall in spending on dining and a 5% drop in groceries. The good news is that after previous lockdowns, spending has bounced back. Reserve Bank Deputy Governor Guy Debelle has been reappointed by the federal government, putting him in the box seat to become the next governor. Current boss Philip Lowe's contract finishes in 2023. The 3 most recent RBA governors, Philip Lowe, Glenn Stevens and Ian Macfarlane, were all internal candidates. While the Victorian Royal Commission continues, yesterday 2 directors appeared and cast doubt over whether Crown Melbourne's boss Xavier Walsh was up to the task. The Western Australian Commission has called for employees and former employees to come forward with any information about illegal or improper activity at the Perth casino. It's interested in evidence of money laundering and infiltration by organised crime. The WA government received the Commission's interim report on June 30, but hasn't yet released it. Gaming group BetMakers has signed a multi-year live streaming agreement to distribute horse racing vision and wagering content from Britain and Ireland to approved bookmakers here in Australia. It will get access to vision from all 26 Irish racecourses and 34 British racecourses. The strategy is pretty simple. People bet more if they can see the race. Sandfire Resources has been granted a licence for its copper mine in Botswana, meaning a $364 million project should be able to go ahead. Construction crews are expected to start in the next few days, said Chief Executive Carl Simic. Production is scheduled to commence early next year. Sandfire's share price rose 1.2% yesterday. You have to give it to the buy now, pay later crowd. They're innovative. Split It will launch a global in-store offering, providing an instalment payment option to shoppers when making large purchases such as furniture. Shoppers will be able to use Apple Pay and Google Pay. Split It's share price rose 1.7% yesterday. And Royal Caribbean, one of the major cruise liners, has cancelled most of its summer voyages around Australia and New Zealand as a result of COVID-19. It joins Holland America in doing so, and 18,000 local jobs are at risk, according to media reports. More than 1 million Australians cruise each year, or at least did, before COVID. As always, up next is our daily interview. Today, we're looking at the world of asset management. My guest is Rita De Silva from EY, who has some pretty confronting forecasts for the sector. But it's a good look broadly at how asset managers make their money, how to choose an asset manager, and what they need to do to remain profitable. That's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist or at fearandgreed.com.au. It's Thursday, the 8th of July, 2021. I'm Sean Aylmer, and that was Fear and Greed. Enjoy your day.